Rich people. What rich person's habits could you not break no matter how poor you become? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. No matter how poor you become, people out here talking about name brand ketchup, apples, and hiring movers have a very limited understanding of how poor they can become. I gotta say, my answer is that no matter how poor I get, I'm not taking out a predatory loan, payday, credit card debt, etc. That's how you bury yourself financially so that you'll stay poor. Story 2. Poverty trauma is real, and my answer is the opposite. There's nothing I wouldn't give up, no matter what. I've still been rehearsing daily how to be poor again. ETA, I'm truly deeply sorry for all of you for whom this has resonated, and I hope you are in a better place now. Story 3. IDK if I'm rich, but I do well. If that counts, I'll always spend on premium shoes for daily wear, and I'll never skimp on a mattress. Not that I buy mattresses often, but just saying. Investing in both pays dividends down the road. Edit. What the is with all these accounts talking about spending money on things that separate you from the ground? This is overrun with bots, but also, what's their purpose? Weird am. Story 4. Most people here have no clue what poor actually means. The only answer to this question for someone actually poor is, like I'd have a choice. I'm in the 1% of incomes of my country now. However, I grew up in a household where there were months we'd eat bread with sugar for a week because that's all we could afford. I grew up feeling guilty for my parents' debts when they bought me a Christmas present worth a few euros because I knew that money would be better spent on bills or food. I was 10. I've been working since I was 13, so my parents didn't have to pay for my anymore from that age on. If you have nothing to spend, the only thing you care about, it's surviving to another paycheck and hoping nothing happens that will cost money. Story 5. Hiring a cleaning service for the house and landscapers for outside maintenance. Were I to truly become poor, I would probably end up dropping both, but they would be probably the last things I get rid of. Cleaning service first, then landscaper. Story 6. Rich people are usually the tightest of tightwads. They budget extremely tight, and they still put money into investments. I would go without many things before I gave up investing, even if I only could invest $10 a week. Story 7. Living below my means. It's an oversimplification, but living below your means for many decades is the surest path to wealth outside of being wealthy at birth. If I were suddenly making $30,000 a year, I'd rent out my house and move in with my parents or in-laws and cut the vast majority of my expenses. Story 8. Flying business or first class on long-haul flights. If I'm too poor to fly, that's okay. I just can't go back. The idea of a 14-hour flight in economy sounds like hell after I've been shown the other side. Story 9. My skincare and makeup, which isn't elaborate, 32 for face wash, that lasts for Verjure, 24 for moisturizer, which lasts forever, both a little goes a long way, 19 and $6 serums, both go a long way, 4 makeup wipes, 12 mascara, 12 concealer, 36 pore primer, 48 Laura Mercier translucent setting powder, 54 Dr. Jart Tiger grass color treatment, don't wear makeup often, so lasts long time. Oh, and my dry shampoo, which is 12. You can buy smaller of each, which would be less upfront. Eek! This way less expensive than rich people spend, Lally. Story 10. As a homeowner and someone who worked as a mover during a summer in college, please tip these dudes. In 2014, I was making $11 in char. And I probably doubled my income because of cash tips. I have moved myself and others too many times to not use movers in the future. Story 11. Not rich, but I grew up with rich people. I would never sleep on polyester sheets. They have to be 100% cotton, and the higher the thread count, the better. All of my pots and pans are all clad copper core. I would never ever cook with Teflon. I would never wear socks that were not at least 95% cotton, and the same goes for my kids' socks. I usually pay top dollar for honey and olive oil. I avoid supermarket meat unless I absolutely have to, and only buy from a butcher. I would never wait in a long line for something free, like a pop-up that gave free samples. My time is too expensive for that. I don't like waiting in lines in general. I would rather donate something rather than spend time and effort listing it and shipping it if I'm not making more than 20 on it. I will never eat raw fish unless the restaurant is extremely expensive. There are probably a few more that I'm forgetting, but those are just a few things off the top of my head. Story 1 and 2. I got rich selling a few software companies. I think my take is almost opposite of what I'd have thought previously. I took time off to build a house. I am not qualified to do that, so there is both massive risk of needing to spend money to fix my ups and the time required to do something I don't know how to do while not making money learning it. So, what I'd really hope to never give up is the sort of reckless financial approach to doing things in the DIY world. I love tinkering, but you don't tinker with your car if you can't afford to trash and replace it. I'd like to think I'd continue to trust in my ability to solve things, because the reality is that it's almost always been more cost-effective to go DIY, assuming you have sufficient time around your making money to live off job. Eat whole, great food. In many ways, access to money means you get higher quality ingredient food that isn't massively processed. It's a value of great chefs and amazing stores. I'd like to think that I'd continue to eat out of the garden and prioritize healthy, delicious whole foods instead of the cost per calorie favorites. This would have limits on the how poor you become spectrum, but I'd take it further into the not rich realm than I would have done the opposite as I gained wealth. Tastes better, better for me, better for planet. Be radically interested in the success of others. Being comfortable means you have emotional energy to think about others and the world around you. It also turns out to be a great strategy for selfish reasons. Helping people is good, feels good, and I believe thoroughly in it being an investment in your own resilience over the long run. Story 1-3, I think most people here haven't been either wealthy or poor. I've been so poor I went hungry and couldn't pay rent, couldn't afford a cell phone or TV, was close to being homeless, only had electric and water because they couldn't cut it off. And now I'm fairly well off. Could use skipping a meal or less phone hawk TV time for sure. I wouldn't give up getting outside and walking, seeing the world for what it is. When I was poor, I had to walk 6 miles RT to Lidl to buy the cheapest bread and beans I could find. Now I hike in the park, but it's the same park and the same sky and the same sun. Never forget that. Everything else is material bullshit. Story 1-4. As a person who's not as financially successful as their parents, I remain loyal to several consumer products and would have to be really strapped to go generic. I may not have much, but I use brand name trash bags and dish soap, and there's always Heinz ketchup in the fridge. I also never skimp on heating and cooling, though I do all I can to insulate well and dress appropriately to minimize the bill. In my poorest years, I gave up a lot of luxuries and some necessities to keep my living space at a comfortable temperature. And Story 1-5. Expensive toilet paper. There's no way my precious butt is touching anything lower than 4-ply for longer than a day. My butt has become so coddled to good TP that it gets irritated after only 2 straight days of normal TP. Story 1-6. Not even a rich thing, but a yard service. I live in Florida. I'm not doing it myself. Mortgage, grocery bill, yard service. That's the order of priority. I'd ride a bus and have no internet before I canceled the yard guys. And I know some folks get satisfaction from doing it themselves, even if they could pay a service. Good for them. Not me. Story 1-7. Being well-dressed, or at least smart-looking. Looking smart makes a huge impact on how one feels and has a huge impact on how others treat you in almost every situation. It's also relatively cheap to look well-presented. You can buy cheap, well-fitting clothes and always look half-decent, even if you can't afford designer. Story 1-8. I grew up poor and am now relatively rich, and I kept thinking, what would I not give up if I didn't have enough to eat? I can't think of a single thing. I'd be sad to let some of my little luxuries go, but there's not a thing I wouldn't do to not be hungry again. Story 1-9. Purchasing high-quality toilet paper. College me felt so overjoyed when the janitorial service handed out free rolls of the crappy 1-ply stuff because someone ordered the wrong type, and it couldn't be returned, yada, yada, yada. Now, no way I would find a way to get that premium level stuff. Story 20. I've never been poor, but I did grow up broke. For anyone that doesn't understand, broke means you have the basic necessities, but almost never have money for anything else. And/or you're living paycheck to paycheck, stressing about what could happen, and/or you're deeply in debt and constantly worried about that, and so on. My mom was a great mom. She busted her ass to provide for me, and even managed to teach me some really important life lessons along the way. I'm glad I grew up this way because it made me independent and highly suspect of just about everything that seems too easy, etc. That said, many years later, I've been pretty fortunate and successful. My wife has been even more successful, and we've built a pretty good life. I still try to impart the stuff I learned when I was younger, and she does too. She grew up flat out poor, so it's a whole other level of trauma. But I have absolutely become a bougie, materialistic suburbanite, and I'll be damned if you will ever get me to give up my Costco executive membership. You can pry it from my cold, dead upper middle class, which doesn't exist, we're all wage slaves. Slightly dry because I don't lotion enough hands. Story 21. I don't think I can be classed as rich, but the mindset to set aside money for savings or doing quick maths for how many months' work something is to figure out if I can afford to just buy it now or if I have to wait and save up. I know that the people are vetted first, but watching any of Caleb Hammer's financial audits on YouTube, it's very scary how many people are in staggering debt and are essentially paycheck to paycheck because of their debt. Story 22. Gotta love the out-of-touch rich folks that don't know the difference between a habit and a purchase. I'm not rich, but I'm better off than most of my friends. Here's some actual answers. Physical fitness. I've spent enough time training that I could do a kinesthetics program, even if I needed to sell all of my workout gear. If I was in a rough spot where I could only afford, or only had time for, fast food, I would still track macros and select the menu items that would best meet my goals. Learning how to do this takes time and money, but the learned habit can stick with you without needing to spend any extra money. Hosting social events. Even if I could no longer afford to provide food and drinks, I would still try to invite friends over regularly and rely on cheap, free forms of entertainment to do so. Not having money can be extremely alienating, and I will never again allow myself to isolate from the world until things are better. Life's too short. Paying people their worth. I absolutely loathe haggling over prices. I find it rude and presumptuous to think that I should get some sort of special deal in any exchange. I'll pay the price that was given to me, and if I can't afford it, then I simply won't purchase it. Story 23. I'm not rich, but I have more money than I've ever had, and I'm realizing I've developed a habit I really need to break. Our living room TV stopped working, so we just moved our bedroom TV into the living room. But my immediate knee-jerk reaction was, let's go buy a new TV. Can we afford it? Yes. Is it necessary? No. So we decided against getting another TV. But I absolutely promise when my husband gets paid on Wednesday, he's going to want to get a new TV. Story 24. Washing my hands. One of the most impactful things I see in unhoused people is how dirty their hands become. I'm not exactly germophobic, but I'm educated enough to be germo-biased. It's not a habit for the sake of compulsion or vanity. It's a priority I would cling to for my own health's sake. Story 25. I'm pretty sure I qualify as rich based on scanning the posts. Married with about $800K in W-2 earnings, 2 kids, East Coast metro area. Here's a recent move I pulled on the car buying front. I decided to buy a Toyota Land Cruiser to get ahead of the possible tariffs, giving my 16YO, our 2019 4Runner, so needed a new car, was all set to pay cash for the $70K vehicle, but they offered 4.9% financing. So I took it and invested the $70K in GLD, gold ETF. Knowing that market chaos was coming, gold is almost always a good bet. I made give or take $7,500 over the past 3-4 weeks, which is more than the interest on the 3-year car loan. I grew up middle class, and my parents wouldn't have done any of the above. Story 26. From a truly poor 32-year-old who's never been wealthy, well-off, or rich, I've come to realize that it's important to still do the things you want with your money, regardless of how dumb it might seem for your tax bracket. I'm not talking about financing cars or anything here, but saving and spending $400 and $500 on something like a piece of jewelry or some really nice boots or clothing now and again makes me feel semi-normal and look good. Honestly, it's probably not actually keeping me from buying a house or retiring, like many older people would say. The reason it's not keeping me from that stuff is because I'll never be able to afford buying a house or retiring. Story 27. Not rich, but I'm upper middle. I'd say dogs, or a pet at least. It's not something I could see myself giving up after suddenly becoming less fortunate. I would do what it takes to make sure I had enough to feed and take care of them, including necessary vet expenses. And I did have a dog, still do, same one, shortly after getting my bachelor's, which was still several years before landing a job in my field. In the meantime, I was a server at a restaurant part-time, which was my only income. Of course, if I was less fortunate, I may not go out and splurge and get a pet I did not already have, but I would not surrender one I've already committed to. Story 28. When losing income, there are some things you just can't get past because of the expense. Here is an example: plane flights. Regular seat, $500, highly flexible. You can spend a bit less if you really want to scrunch down on the cost. First class, $1,000. Charter a plane, $2,000 an hour. Seats, 610 timeshare on a jet, $350 plus 50 hours per year of flight time at $20 hour. Jet lease or ownership, how much do you want to spend? Some of those costs are just outside the realm of people who don't have portfolios, not in the millions of dollars. Story 29. I am not rich, but also not poor. I would never go on a holiday where I have to think about every little amount I have to spend. A holiday is to relax and have fun. If the money for that is not available, I would rather stay at home and spend what money there is differently. So many people search for the cheapest flight, the cheapest hotel without even an own bathroom. Try to spend as little as possible on food. All that for what? Just to be in another country? Instead of going once a year, better go once every 2 years and have a little more funds available. Astor Titanum. Story 30. Not rich, but we make about 4x the median income in our city. I will always go to the doctor and dentist every 6 months. You're only given one body, one set of teeth, and the misery I've seen due to ignoring healthcare maintenance is horrifying. I've done this even when I was making $8 an hour with no health insurance. Put all my doctor, dentist, and therapy appointments on my credit card. No regrets. Take care of yourself, folks. Story 31. The number of people in this thread who don't understand what poor means is frightening. People talking about giving up their lawn care services last or robot mops, etc. Poor is living in your car, if you are lucky enough to have one, or in a tent on the sidewalk or in some park. You don't have a lawn to mow or a floor to mop. Story 32. Grew up in a middle-class family that gradually became wealthier. I've stayed surprisingly frugal on most things, but have come to appreciate the value of paying a bit of a premium for the healthiest possible diet. Maintaining a decent amount of beef, eggs, fish in my diet hasn't always been the kindest to the wallet, nor is focusing on organic products. Every so often, though, I bite the bullet and buy some processed for nostalgia's sake. I can only do salmon and kale over quinoa and the like for so long before I begin to rumble for a cheeseburger in paradise. Long live the Irish clown and his emo friends. Story 33. Not going out to eat for lunch during work? I'll always bring food from home. I have coworkers who have needed personal loans from their boss, my husband, to help pay for their life expenses like cars, housing, and daycare. But they also go out to eat for lunch multiple times a week. It actually irritates me. I have been poor, even on food stamps, for a few months. And when I was at my poorest, I would cut any unnecessary cost to save money. That's just what you do when you're poor. You can't simply buy stuff or eat what you want. So seeing people who clearly don't have a lot of money continue to spend unnecessary funds when they really should be saving it for other financial areas just bugs me, since I have been on that income level too. But I always sacrificed and was able to eat and have a roof over my head without ever completely running out of money to ask people for personal loans. Story 34. My time is now more valuable than what a lot of things shy services cost. House cleaner, yard maintenance, servicing my vehicle. Will always pay for these services to buy my free time on the weekends. No longer spend time trying to DIY. Just pay someone and spend the Saturday with my wife and daughter. Story 35. Good furniture. With this said, I am steady middle class. Almost all of my furniture has come from thrift stores, estate sales, and the curb, but is all sturdy, real wood. I'm not buying a particle board bookcase from Walmart. You get what you pay for. The thought of using that little weird IKEA wrench to put something together pains me. Story 36. Not rich, but fairly well off. High quality shoes, sunglasses, and mattress. I am not talking whatever the shoes are with the red soles, but well-made dress or work boots. Same for sunglasses. Randolph Engineering or American Optical. The only rich person thing we have is someone to clean the house once a week. Floors, bathrooms, and dusting. Once every 6 months, we will have them do a hardcore deep clean. I enjoy cooking, so I will never let that go. Same for laundry and ironing. It's insanely therapeutic for me. Story 37. IDK. If I'm rich, we have enough money that last week, our financial advisor offered to fly from the States to England to meet with us instead of doing a Zoom meeting. The offer was declined, but we have had them fly to meet us when we still lived in the States. I would never go back to buying fast fashion. I'd rather have one well-made dress that lasts 1,000 washes than 100 cheap pieces that fall apart. I definitely think that if we were broke tomorrow, I could continue this habit with careful budgeting. I don't care about having a new outfit every week. I care about the clothing I have being good quality and well-fitting. Story 38. This is an interesting one. I guess the disciplines that work to create success in the first place. I try to live a fairly structured day with a range of objectives that I need to execute on to build my companies and improve myself. While it's entirely conceivable that I could go broke at some point, I doubt that I'd ever give up trying to better myself in my situation with a highly focused and diligent approach. I know that's not the answer people want, so I guess buying good beans for coffee. Story 39. You asked about habits, not products or services. I'm not sure how to answer this question. I spend a lot of time learning new things, reading books, experimenting, and growing my mind. This doesn't cost more than investing time and leveraging the public library. Keep your mind sharp. If I was to lose all my material wealth, I'd hopefully still have my mind. Story 41. Health insurance, does that count? If not, 2. Reddit Premium and Netflix. I don't consider myself rich, but if I were to lose everything tomorrow, the worst parts would be not being able to eat quality food or escape into TV, films, or Reddit without being bombarded with ads. Ad-free media consumption is truly a luxury, and it matters toward your mental health more than you'd think. I'd rather quit watching TV than watch commercials. Story 41. Reading. Whether it is books, publications, lit novels, Kindle, newspapers, e-newspapers, etc., read something. If not living paycheck to paycheck, pick a topic on improving your self-esteem, improving a skill, investing or finances, etc. If living paycheck to paycheck, listening to podcasts or reading about a tangible skill such as coding, build a website, create automated coding, learning a new language, cooking, apprenticeships. My idea is that those living paycheck to paycheck either take public transportation or travel long distances due to cost of rent. Rather than spending time idling or staring off to space, read or listen to something constructive. Avoid politics and polarizing topics, IMO, unless those genuinely bring you joy. But I ain't rich, so da fuck I know. Story 42. I misread that this was directed at rich people, but I already typed this up and I'm poor. Good healthy food. I will never settle for ramen unless I literally only had 50 cents to my name and no choice. I have and will continue to eat organic, pasture-raised, grass-fed milk, meat and eggs as the base of my diet and main source of calories, even while I am borderline homeless right now. Nobody is going to make me feel ashamed for putting my health first and eating a diet that keeps me feeling sharp, energized, healthy, free from pesticides, preservatives, and poisons, etc. Many other poor people prioritize dumb emo while putting healthy food at the bottom of their priority list and attempt to run on processed that they can eat more of. I'd rather eat less food that is more nutrient, dense, and cleaner. Story 43. Paying for things like YouTube and Reddit Premium. I hate ads, probably to an irrational level, LOL. People always ask you, what's one of the best things about having financial independence? Honestly, for me, it's not the gated communities or flashy toys. That's all kind of cringe, to be honest. It's the little things, like not having what I'm watching interrupted by a 30-second commercial for something I'll never buy. I seriously can't explain how much rage ads spark in me. And the funniest part? The same people who roast me for paying for ad-free YouTube are the ones complaining about how annoying the ads are in the very next comment. LMAO. Story 44. Probably the most obvious one is maintaining my credit and utilizing credit card points. I don't spend cash on anything. I don't pay cash for anything. If something has 0% APR, I use my credit and get it at 0% APR. Why pay for something now I can pay for over 24 months, same as cash? I can invest that money or use it elsewhere. We'll give you this card today for 0 down at 0% APR for 50 over 60 months. Say less. I pay basically 0% interest on anything I buy and pay my cards off every cycle, and they just give me money. It adds up to over $6,000 a year in rewards. And I'm not rich, just 250 KD combined income household in a low-COL, but this is how we live. Even if I lost my job and we ended it up sub 70K with every household, we'd still be using our credit and maintaining our 820 plus credit scores. I don't even take my debit card anywhere I go. I use credit cards when out and about or abroad, and I don't give my debit card to anyone, and I don't write checks. And with higher-end American Express Platinum cards, etc., It's such a good experience. Private airport lounges, hotel perks, travel perks galore, points, etc. And that's just one of like 5 cards. Story 45. A car. I spent so much of my life on a bus, waiting for a bus, or looking up a bus schedule. Yeah, I could save money, but it single-handedly gave me back so much time. Second, my own washer. I can live without a dryer, but I hope I never have to go back to saving quarters and spending my day guarding the good washer in a laundromat. Story 46. My truck. I love camping and doing things myself, and if ever hits the fan, I'm going to live out of my truck, catch as much fish as I can, forage what wild greens I can get, and supplement with beans and other similar bulk foods. I've got a 10 camping shower, can filter water with natural materials, and can fix most problems on my truck. It's my baby and I'm never giving it up. Story 47. Taking a shower. Keeping myself and my clothes clean. I have worked with folks across various social status, and consistent body odor is something that one would notice from folks in the slums, ghetto. That's something that I will never have, or basically try to eliminate, even if I go homeless. Story 48. Not me, but my parents lost their wealth, and my mom kept grocery shopping like when we were rich. $300 a week, partly cause my dad got abusive if whatever he was randomly in the mood for wasn't fast prepared. So yeah, that was an issue. I was most of my life poor. Funnily, I have money now, but can't stop having a panic attack when spending more than 1,000 euros, including rent in a month, lol. Story 49. I am not exactly rich, but I am much more financially secure than I used to be. One thing I have always done and will do, no matter my income, is to buy the good, thick, soft toilet paper. It is not that much more expensive than the cheap, awful stuff, and it is a nice little everyday luxury. I would literally have to be down to choose between food or toilet paper before I would buy the cheap stuff. And even then, a package of 10 might cost 2 more than the cheap stuff. It would be worth it, unless I would literally starve otherwise. Story 50. Not wasting money on things you don't need. Sounds counterintuitive, but I have seen both worlds, and a lot of poverty-level people have houses full of junk, while self-made rich people are very deliberate, cheap, with every dollar spent. This might be a weird US thing, but my friends in the most rundown trailers always had the largest TVs. Story 51. Going to the farmer's market and museum memberships. In a way, with the memberships, I'm saving money. I have something to do other than going out to eat or to a bar, especially when I have friends in town, or remembering to be generous. Buying around or taking care of the bill sometimes goes a long way with a friend or family member who needs it either financially or emotionally. Story 52. I'm not rich. Our household income is maybe 300 KOD pre-tax, and there probably isn't anything I wouldn't give up to be able to keep my kid fed and healthy if I became poor. But I often tell myself that even if I cut out all other subscription services, I recently canceled Amazon Prime, I will hold on to my New York Times digital subscription as long as I possibly can. Reading the actual news is too depressing now, but I live for connections and mini crossword, The Ethicist, and NYT cooking. Story 53. If it's not of a certain quality, I'm not buying it. I'd rather go entirely without than endorse capitalist shite ripping off the poor for profit with junk that breaks in 5 minutes that still isn't worth half the discount knockoff price. Shoes is a good example. Those 15 shoes you buy from the bargain buckets is just 15 wasted ammo, she says, with wet feet in winter. But my 90 hiking boots have lasted me 15 years before they broke. I will have wet feet until I can afford something decent. Offering to pay for a round of drinks. If I can't afford to cover a round, I just won't go. I feel too ashamed and embarrassed. Even if it's unlikely doing rounds will even be a thing, I have to feel prepared to be in a position to offer. And I feel really uncomfortable if I can't sit there anxious in case anyone offers a round. Because if they do, so do you. I blame my snobby parents for openly bitching about people not offering a round, which in hindsight wasn't rich person etiquette, was just my parents being AIs. But buying in rounds was the general norm amongst the social circle, so this was the message I internalized. Story 54. Okay, as someone who used to be poor and is now not really rich but very comfortable, the habit I would hold on to until no longer possible. Coffee imported from Ethiopia. They're a company near me that imports coffee directly from farms in Ethiopia, Colombia, Peru, etc. In the past 5 years, I've become completely addicted to this Ethiopian Harar coffee. It is indescribable good. Story 55 for me would be using AC heat. I was born in South America, where I grew up without the privilege of controlling the internal temperature of my house, and it sucked. Used to sweat 24/7 in the hot months and literally sleep under 5 blankets in the winter. One of my favorite things about America is definitely being able to control my home temperature. Story 56, I'm not rich, but if I were, I'd probably cling to the habit of always having fresh, high-quality coffee, like those fancy beans that cost 20 a bag. Even if I were broke, I'd still find a way to brew a good cup. Maybe cutting corners elsewhere. It's the little luxury that keeps me sane. I'm all about small budget hacks through Money Mastery Society, so I'd probably stretch that bag to last a month. What rich habit would you never give up? Story 57. I'm poor but grew up in an environment that saw me learning to drive in a Porsche. My mom was really into Good Eats and Food Network growing up, and she introduced me to gourmet home cooking at a young age. Like a lot of other commenters here, I can't skimp on certain food items. Chunk tuna, sockeye salmon, quality rice, etc. It's fun to make it frugal though. Bulk rice from the Indian grocery, canned sockeye, whole tenderloin in bulk, etc. Story 58, I was never really rich, but I'm trying to break the habit of buying things without looking at the price. I used to have a good job for someone that just got out of high school, and I didn't have to look at the price tag for anything. Now I have a okay paying job, and I went into a lot of debt recently because of overseas surgeries, and I'm now realizing what my mom was trying to teach me. Story 59. I'm not rich, but the pandemic and working from home has ruined my standards for toilet paper. Like, I'll get called into the office once in a blue moon, and the toilet paper is like 2 plies of air with the texture of tree bark and sharp edges. How did I used to live like this? Seriously, you know how people bring their own tissues in those little packets? I'm thinking about bringing my own TP to offices. This is at a big multi-billion-dollar company, BTW. I'm not in the executive suite or anything, but WTF. God forbid I have to go at an Olive Garden or something. That's like 1 ply, 1,000 linear FT for one stuff. Story 60, living beneath my means. I was brought up to spend less than my income. When a divorce and a medical issue prevented me from working, I was so frugal, I would spend what felt like too much to me. Yet I'd consistently hit the maximum debit balance on my food stamp card when they put more money on it every month. $2,500 at first, then $3,500 when they changed the max balance during COVID. Generosity with tips, gifts, helping others, etc. Your relationships and connections are often the most valuable assets. Shares of stock won't tell you how to navigate a hospital system or help your kid deal with bullies at the schoolyard during recess. Story 61. I'd rather not drink or eat a product than buy not fair trade, at minimum, produce. It's just a core principle of mine at this point, and I have absolutely no interest in compromising on it. If I'm too poor to not be able to afford $54 for a month's worth of my daily pot of tea, then I just don't get to drink tea anymore. Same for coffee. Realistically, I'd just ration it, but you know, the principle of the matter. Perhaps I'd be singing a different tune if I lived somewhere that didn't produce a large amount of its own veg, either themselves or readily sourced from neighboring countries, but I genuinely believe that everyone, especially agricultural workers, deserve to be paid a living wage. Story 62. Not doing something I really want to do, travel, event, experience, because it costs too much money. I try to economize on many things, but if I really want to go on a 5K plug golf trip, I go. If I really want to try that 2-3-star Michelin restaurant, I do. It would be tough to deny myself the luxurious splurges. Story 63. Interesting question. I've had periods of my time where I have had ample steady income and where I had to live on unemployment and had to cut back on all the convenience items I was accustomed to my whole life. And the one thing I swore I would never give up since my mom taught me this was to never have UN manicured nails. And I always, that this was a sign of wealth. I would always notice if a woman didn't have their nails polished. And for the majority of my young adult, like, you would never catch me without polish. Done my manicurist every 2 weeks in that salon chair. Then I had gone through a bit of unemployment, and it was the first thing I let go, and it gave me some perspective on money. But in my 20s, once I got that job again, I was right in that salon chair. Even during unemployment, I would save my money for when I had an interview to get a man-eye, because God forbid I go to it without polish. What's interesting is now I'm 34, and have way more money as income than I did at that age, along with wealth. And my view on getting my nails done has totally changed. I only go when I have an event or need to, and not as regular maintenance since I'm so busy. Not sure what changed. Maybe I matured, not sure, but the 20-year-old me would for sure have answered a manicure. But now, after going through the times of low income, I can say there isn't anything I know I can't cut out to get through rough patch time. But thank goodness I have learned from that and saved my money so I can get a few manis if I ever do lose my job again. Story 64. I'm not rich, but I'm somewhere between low and middle class, which here in the USA basically puts me in the top 10%. Hellmann's mayonnaise. I will never buy store brand. I might go Duke's. Oh, and when renting a car, I don't get the cheapest one. When I realized that I was actually choosing the car I want, it was eye-opening. I grew up very poor. My dad rented a car once, and it was an ordeal. One of my last trips, I rented a Jeep Wrangler, like 3x more expensive than the cheapest option. I didn't have to stress about it. Honestly, I could cry right now thinking about it. Getting to this point with my wife has not been easy, fun, or cool. Story 65. I know I'm as exciting as a wet blanket, but it's too difficult to answer this question without unpacking all the details of this hypothetical of how I became poor. We'd have to fall through a lot of safety nets, sustain numerous major setbacks for several years, before we'd have to start making lifestyle changes. Story 66. I will eat nothing but rice and beans for the rest of my life to afford a proper mattress. Made sleeping go from go to bed tired, wake up tired, turn into a superpower of waking up well-rested before the alarm even rings. Same thing for shoes. I've had to deal with shoes that I managed to wear out the soles within 6 months. My Grisports are still going strong 2 years in and don't hurt my feet. Story 67 I can answer, as I've had some real-life events like this. I have slept a few nights in my car, that's how poor I was. Then I married a man who became a doctor and made great money. Then he made a dumb decision and lost that, and we have to live off my nurse's salary now. I'm draining my account to pay for proper mental therapy after what happened to move forward as best as possible. Might suck now, but I have to deal with this as best as I can now, or in 10 years, I will have so many unresolved problems. Canceled cleaning, and that was fine. My house is just a little messier, and I'm just learning to not be high-strung. No more eating out. I'm just happy to have a roof over my head, even if I have to live in a bit of shame, and would love to be able to move and disappear ASAP. I guess I'm just saying you can live with losing a lot more than you think you can. Story 68, short story. I was rich 30-50, married, and then divorced and decided I am happiest living very frugally. I am very much a minimalist. What are the things that I still value, even if I gave them up? Maid service. Dust and a thorough, deep clean is worth the money. Healthcare. Yes, in America, it is a rich person's habit to get your teeth cleaned 4x a year instead of just 2x or none. Annual checkups, annual blood work, and go to the doctor when you are sick instead of wait for it to go away. Sleep system. Quality mattress, frame, bedding, darkness, quiet, cool, and ability to fart without shame. Big garage. I'm a guy. I want to retire and convert a garage into a house home to live. So useful. Travel. I traveled the world and stayed in EXP hotels. I now travel and camp for cheap and MTB trails instead of stay at resorts getting fat. Cape. Yes, I wear a cape or cloak. I am not a barbarian. Get on my level. Story 69. Far from rich, but I don't check my bank account when I go out to dinner. Twice a week. I just know it's fine, and $100 won't really hurt me. I think I'd be able to fix the habit, but it'd be a lot of work. Probably should, as between going to dinner and getting delivery, I probably spend $1,000 a month. Story 70, using an AC. In my country, having an AC at home and using it frequently is a luxury. But due to global warming, our country is basically a free taste of hell. It's hot AF in here, and you could die from heat stroke just by walking outside. So even though I am piss poor, I will do everything I can to keep my AC on. I'd rather pay electric bills than hospital bills. Story 71, business class with lie flat seats for long-haul flights. Not worth it for short-haul, but I would give up traveling rather than spend X amount of hours in economy. I've flown first before and didn't think that justified the price increase from business. Business class with Emirates and Qatar is lush. Story 72, interesting. I can downgrade everything pretty easily, I think, because I don't care that much about stuff and I hate waste. But X, while I can certainly move from a comfortable home into, say, an apartment, I do not want to live in an apartment in an area where people just don't give up about being somewhat clean or being loud, making noise at all hours, as if they don't give about their neighbors at all. Story 73. Not rich but organic food. If I ever fall from this tax bracket, I will make sacrifices elsewhere. Your input is your output, and it's much easier to do life with healthy fuel. Processed foods and poor diet are linked to several mental health issues, which I am prone to genetically. I am not 100% organic, but switching my diet to at least 60% each week has helped every aspect of my mental and physical wellness. Story 74. Bowing for everything and being absurdly formal about it. When I say thank you, I bow. When I apologize, I bow. In Midwest America, I imagine it can throw a couple folks off in a public environment when I'm unnaturally formal about things. I grew up in a family that highly valued the idea of being a gentleman and remain humble in situations. As a result, when I left the family to build myself up, I just feel compelled to bow in social situations like the above. Story 75. As someone who grew up in a trailer when I was a kid, single mom on welfare, living well below the poverty line, to someone who has done all right for themselves, I would never go back to carrying a balance on my credit cards. If I couldn't pay them off before the balance is due, I wouldn't use them. Story 76. Spend on the activity you traveled for or don't go. Fly cheap, sleep in a bunk, eat Costco chicken, but if you went there to surf, go ahead and pay the $20 to park at the beach rather than burn half your energy walking from the free parking lot or staying so far from the beach that half the time you go, meh, it's too far, I'll skip today. Or if you went there to eat the local cuisine, sleep in a bunk and don't even go to the beach, but eat the cuisine. If you can't afford to do the reason you went there, stay home and think about what you've done. Story 77. I used to shop based on low price only. Never really thought about quality long term. I read labels and price compared like a hawk. Then was usually disappointed with the cheap quality of everything I owned. Now I don't quibble or hesitate when it's a basic we use or depend on daily. If it absolutely never fails, if it's multi-purpose or looks nice, I like it, I'll pay it. Don't even look at the price tag. Story 78. Was raised very affluent, then lived deeply below the poverty line once out on my own. Had to have really nice winter boots for Canadian winters. The cheap ones would break in the middle of winter from the salt on the streets. I thrifted boots, even if they were ugly or men's. They had to be really high quality. I couldn't afford to buy the cheap ones, you know? Story 79. Researching before I buy something expensive. Being expensive is relative, but if it costs a lot of money relative to what I can afford, I would always make sure I'm buying the best quality I can. And remember that quality and expensive are not the same thing. High quality is often more expensive, but more expensive does not mean higher quality. And paying more for better quality will save money in the long run. I understand that if you don't have a lot of money, your choices are limited. But making the best decision with what you have is the most importantly thing. Story 80. Clean home. I would rather live in a clean tent or efficiency apartment than a dirty 3-bedroom home. I will always keep it just small enough to be able to clean it myself and be spotless. Also, fresh vegetables and fruit. I would skip a meal of ramen and chips to be able to make a simple veggie soup. Story 81. Oh, I can speak from experience. Went from upper middle class to homeless in a few months' time span. Now, from the other side, I can say we always made sure to enjoy a restaurant-cooked meal whenever we had a few extra dollars. And by restaurant, I mean like a local family-owned Italian restaurant. We could make the leftovers last for a few days. It never failed to lift our spirits. Story 82. I'm far from rich, but better than I was. At one point when my kids were little, my wife and I hit a financial rough patch and couldn't afford groceries. We had a bunch of kids. We had a giant Sam's Club bag of pancake mix. Eggs were cheap. We ate pancakes and eggs multiple times a week for a couple months. Never again with the pancakes. Story 83. 3 things. Good toilet paper, doing laundry in a normal cadence, and treating myself to good food. Growing up poor, it felt terrible wearing clothes that haven't been washed in weeks to even months. I made do with what I could, but if we didn't have the money, we simply tried to hand wash. I also just really like nice toilet paper. It's one of those things that I don't like cheaping out on. Same thing with food, growing up trying to make do with having no food in the house because my mom would sell our EBT money to buy shoes, clothes for clubbing, made me have severe food insecurity. I love food and will spend more money for a good meal than anything else. Story 84, I'm not rich, but in a comfortable middle-class family. I'm not giving up having my hair done at the hairdresser's. It makes me feel confident and beautiful, and I absolutely reflect that in my daily life. I love my dyed hair, my perms, my well-cut hair. It's something I'll always be saving up for, and I will never touch my hair myself again. One mistake is enough. With that being said, a color job with bleach is 100 where I live, and it is absolutely a rich people give me looks for. Story 85. When my wife and I bought our first house and had our first baby, we were the poorest we would ever be. We tracked 100% of our expenses. We gave up on eating out, vacations, and we delayed any home improvements. The one luxury we couldn't give up was dry cleaning my dress shirts for work. We tried, and ironing shirts was too time-consuming, and we could never make them look nice. Story 86, my own washing machine. I'll do anything to avoid the communal washing machine room that's always on the opposite side of the apartment complex and smells like wet pets. I would rather wash every single piece of clothing by hand in one of those little Temo washers than do that again. Story 87. For me, it's professional landscapers. I enjoy doing my lawn weekly as a sort of therapy. That's easy mow, edge blow, and I have instant gratification. Plus, I get a little exercise walking in fresh air. I will do this until I can't walk anymore. But the spring and fall cleanups, plus weeding, yeah, I hire that done. Same company comes out mid-April, pulls all the weeds in the beds, lays down fresh mulch, replace any dead plants, put new flowers in the beds, and begins the lawn fertilization, Josh weed killer mix to keep my lawn green. Then each month comes back and makes sure the beds stay weed-free and mulch stays fresh. Plus put in some new plants that flower in the summer months. They do this until about November where everything goes dormant, but will come back in December to make sure the leaves that have fallen are picked up and gone. Then springtime start the process over again. I will never weed a bed again as long as I live, hopefully. Just kills my knees and hands to do it. I also hire my Christmas lights being done outside. But if I were ever to fall behind financially, I would do this again. Story 88. I'm definitely not in the 1%, but I'm above the middle class. One thing I'll note is a rich person habit that I won't break, no matter how poor I am, is feeling like you have to finish all of your food at meals. I grew up poor, and my mom always made sure we ate all the food on our plate because there are starving people all over the world that would eat that if they could. It wasn't until I was much older and had money that I realized that wealthy people don't eat all the food on their plate, and neither should I. It also helped me get over many poor eating habits that lead to being overweight. Story 89. I'd rather go out once a year and have it be to a super upscale place than go out every weekend to places. That's not fun for me or a good use of my time. Absolutely none of my friends get this. They always want to go blow 10, 15 all night at dive bars and clubs and think what they're doing is more affordable than what I want to do somehow. Like, girl, just save all that money and it would easily cover the cost of a major music festival or cool spa. I literally go out maybe twice a year and am happy that way. Story 90. I'm not rich, but having experienced Sam Vimes' boot theory of socioeconomic unfairness myself, I'll never not spend extra money to get high-quality socks and shoes again. My Red Wing boots and socks have been a godsend for my job. Story 91. Good Chinese tea. Good British tea is like, I took the leftover sawdust from the tea warehouse and flavored it with fruit, then put 1 gram of it in a bag. We've been doing this for over 100 years. In the south of China, in a mountainous province called Yunnan, you can find the original habitat of the tea plant. This is one of only 2 places that the ancient tea trees necessary to grow good oolong tea reside. In these mountains, the ancient tea trade began. Yunnan lays claim to a tradition known as pu'er. This isn't a green, black, or white tea like we're familiar with in the West, but rather a yancha, or fermented tea. It has been processed in a cave using old techniques developed in Tibet. This process turns the leaves from green to black and completely transforms the taste of the tea into a less bitter, but much more pungent and complex profile. It also usually compacts the tea into hard circular cakes that can be transported, stored, and aged further very easily. Good pu'er cakes can go for thousands of dollars and are traded speculatively. Within this tradition, there is a new form emerging that is known as ziya, purple buds. To make this tea, they selectively use only tea plants with a specific mutation that causes them to grow darker and more similar to wild tea. Once fermented, this tea makes a beautiful yellow liquor with a surprisingly light taste that I have fallen in love with. Per cup, it's actually almost exactly the same price as the dusty bag stuff. Story 92. Parents aren't rich, but my mother comes from a family that was rich until the beginning of the 20th century, and even though she was born 60 years after the money ran out, it shows. Anyway, they just bought a luxury car even though my dad has been unemployed for a year because they were tired of sharing mine. Story 93. I can't stand most store-brand foods, especially sodas. I'd rather spend the money to fix something properly instead of doing a ton of temporary fixes myself. I'm picky about the ingredients in my food in dumb ways, like I swear the already chopped salad bags taste better than the lettuce I cut myself. I don't care if a different version of the same ingredient is on sale, I want the one I like. Despite being a librarian, I'd rather buy the book myself instead of reading them free from the library if I can't get it through Libby, though that probably actually comes from being a librarian and seeing the things books come back covered in. I won't wear used clothes if I don't know the person who owned them before me. Story 94. There are so many IDK where to start. I would keep the poop picker upper for the yard. I would have the hardest time giving up the house cleanings. Shopping at high-end specialty grocery would be hard to give up. Driving a non-luxury car would be difficult. I have a lot of personal maintenance items. The saying, "You're not ugly, you're just poor," may start to come into existence for me, LOL. Not looking at prices is a habit I would have to give up. This is a tough question. Story 95. I'm not rich, but I have been steal food to survive poor, and now I make more money than I ever imagined I would. One thing I'll never give up is the mindset to push myself to achieve and not just give up and accept my circumstances. It's the reason I've gotten where I am today, and I'm confident that if I lost it all and had to start over again tomorrow, I'd be able to get back here eventually. Story 96. Not rich, I think, but is rich. Luggage, so hard to travel with. Pulling, lugging it, waiting for it, and when you get to destination, straight to the hotel to drop it off. No time to enjoy the sights, wander the city, or relax first because you got 1, 2, 3 pieces of luggage. For the cost airlines charge per piece these days, courier it to your destination a half week in advance. Also airport lounges. Not to sound snooty, but I don't think I would want to travel without this plumb many ways to get in, even if not invited by perks. It's usually still less costly to get in than it is to buy a coffee, a burger plus Mabi, a beer on a series of layovers. Story 97. Habits harkens to keeping house, etc. in my brain, and so I'll say, I'm still making my bed and doing my daily quick chores. That's probably the number one thing I remember growing up poor and hating it, the lack of cleanliness. Anywhere, if their house was clean, I knew they were rich, which makes me laugh now because a lot of them weren't rich. I just didn't know that you could be poor and still give a darn. Story 98. The way I got out of poverty can be attributed to big changes I made in myself. Traits, behaviors, and characteristics that no matter my income, I will not revert. I'm clean from alcohol. I surround myself with mentors and positive role models. I avoid people who invite turmoil and dysfunction or try and bring me down or add unnecessary risk to my life. I prioritize what's important and I work hard investing in that, dedicated to my wife and the family we want to build. I'm focused on preserving what we have and stabilizing our future so that the threat of poverty gets further and further away. It's extremely challenging and impossible without a boatload of luck and support from others. I got lucky and had help along the way, but if I didn't change myself first, it would have all been wasted. Story 99. Habit? I don't know. Not spending every dollar I make each month unless it comes down to living in the street. I suppose it depends on your definition of poor, though. I grew up pretty lower middle class and ended up homeless for a little while in my late teens due to some bad family problems. I had pretty horrible money management skills, but was luckily always fairly employable and never went without work for more than a week in between jobs. It took me a while to learn how to save, though, even when I started making decent money. I started by saving the change of every transaction and using cash for everything. If something cost $3.20, I put $80 into a jar for savings. As my income grew, this became paying for everything to the nearest 5, 10, and 20. So at the end, if something cost $12, I put the 8 change into savings. That's roughly once I had enough of a cushion and developed better routines around money, so ended the practice. If I wasn't completely poor, the last luxury in life I'd give up is air conditioning. I grew up where you just sweat a lot in the hot summer nights with a fan and absolutely hated it. Sleep is already difficult for me, so I'd give that up last so long as I could afford the electricity. I'm pretty handy, so I'm positive I could find a small window 8 unit for free in the trash I could fix up pretty easily. Story 10, buying the good soft multiply toilet paper. Buying the packages that have the best cost-to-weight ratio and not the portions that are the cheapest. There is something perverse about buying the cheapest option because you want to save money and paying more due to it. Story 11, yearly medical screenings and seeing specialists, not just a GP, A1C, cholesterol, cancer screenings, dental cleanings, etc. Suffered for decades with medical issues that took a surgery and 4 weeks recovery. The decades I lost because of pain and bad insurance saying wouldn't cover. Got a job with good insurance and a copay that took 6 months of savings, but I could do it. Story 12, proper toilet paper. Even if I am flat broke, I am not buying single-ply toilet paper. I don't need fancy 3 or 4 ply, that is excessive, but single-ply toilet paper and scratches and doesn't actually clean your butt. Not to mention the risk of your finger punching a hole in it while you're wiping and ending up in the literal. No thank you, ma'am. You can pry my 2-ply from my cold, dead hands. Story 13, quality clothing. And I don't mean luxury brands or even high-end manufacturers, just good material quality. I work outside most days. Sometimes 12 plus hours with no breaks. A while back, I switched to merino underwear, socks, and shirts. I am significantly more comfortable throughout the day, and I don't smell or feel as sweaty and gross at the end of the day. It's an absolute game changer. Story 14, I don't think there's anything I would never give up, but here are a few that would be the last things I'd consider giving up. Movers, moving my big wooden furniture alone again. Fuck that. Quality acrylic nail materials. I do my own nails anyway, so it's already a cheap hobby, but I spend extra dollars on quality RN because I can afford it. Professional nail trims and spa days for the puppy. I can do this. I hate doing it and being the bad guy to my dog for a day. She hates her spa days more than I do, the poor thing. The ultimate last thing I'd consider is forcing my partner to have a job. At the moment, I'm a spoiled little and I know it. I make enough money now to have my husband be stay-at-home. He does side jobs and online gaming credit stuff, so he does pay for all my video games. He just got me a bunch of Cult of the Lamb, WoW, and Sims X packs all for free via trading and grinding. Having him 100% free to be at my beck and call for home emergencies and shopping, and all the stuff I cannot stand to do on my own, maintenance, cleaning, vet stuff, etc., is a blessing I refuse to give up unless we are that desperate. Story 15. For my mom, the hardest thing to give up when we went from rich to poor, crazy life circumstances out of our control, we lost everything, was giving up her house cleaners. Man, did she really suffer having to scrub our toilets herself, coming from a life in which she wasn't even allowed to enter the kitchen in her home BC. That's not a place for a lady. It's for the house help. I think a combination of losing her leisure time and having to clean was really actually way harder than I ever imagined it could be. Like there was real suffering. She wasn't being a baby about it. She was a real trooper and did what she had to do, but I could see her crying alone outside in the car before coming inside the house and pretending she was okay for us. For my dad, it was losing automatic respect. As a rich businessman, he was automatically respected everywhere he went. As a poor immigrant, everyone assumed he was ignorant, lazy, and treated him as such. It was very difficult since he was actually highly educated and knowledgeable about a lot of things, and especially for someone who always went out of their way to treat his workers with kindness and respect when he was in a top position. I guess he expected the world to be as kind as he was, but it was not. For him, it was also really hard to realize that he could not provide himself and his family with everything they wanted. This was very hard, and it took a long time to learn that sometimes you just can't get what you want. It was a foreign concept to my parents. As a child, I adapted a bit quicker because I saw them suffering, and I didn't want to contribute more to their suffering by demanding things they could previously give me and now clearly can't. Story 16. The issue here is the question itself. It implies a choice in a situation that has none. Being poor means you don't get much in the way of choice. If you are poor, You've long since abandoned anything resembling rich person's habits. You meet basic needs first: water, food, clothing, shelter. And if anything is left over, you debate between difficult options. Everyone is struggling with people's responses to this question, but the premise is flawed.